You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined, as always, by your co-host, Kevin. Alex is not going to be joining us tonight. He's a little under the weather, but we'll see him back here sooner than later. Kevin, how we doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Alex, if you're tuning in, rest up. Lots of vitamin C. Maybe a warm bath, maybe some bubbles, whatever's going to help you get through this, buddy. But we're pulling for a speedy recovery for you.
I like that, the old bubble bath. You put a little elderberry in there. I hear that's good for the immune system. So, whatever it takes, that way we can get him back here for next week, ready to rock and roll here. And because he definitely had one of the shines of the of all time there on that Derrick Henry call. And we'll get to
pine.
That. Yeah. Well, yes, the pine. I said shine, but yes, the pine of Derrick Henry. And man, oh man, was that a now the question is when he brings that up, do you think it's going to be the Greg Dortch call that he made that one time, or the Derrick Henry call that he made the one time?
Well, for his sake, I hope he's saying it's the Derrick Henry call, because a lot of people this season are completely forgetting who Greg Dortch is.
Yes, that's them's some big facts, as they say, big facts. So we do have a great show for you tonight, though. We are going to be rocking and rolling through a whole lot of good stuff. We've got some waiver wire we're going to touch on. We've got the Pine and Shine results from week 3, as well as we've got Thursday night breakdowns for you, and we've got the Pine and Shines for week 4. And like we just alluded to, had you been listening last week, you would have known to go somewhere else other than Derrick Henry for your deal, and you would have avoided getting only 2 fantasy points for your running back situation there. So, any news or notes you want to hit up here before we start touching on the waiver wire?
I am denouncing my Broncos fandom. So I am a free agent in NFL fandom here at the moment. So,
I'm actively rooting on whatever team's playing against the Broncos, because at this point, if the Broncos lose out, Caleb Williams.
Yep.
I'm now
track now. Arizona took care of that. The problem is, I said this last week, I don't know where the win comes from. Like, a lot of people point to this week, the rebound game and the Bears and everything. Or was it 2 weeks when they play the Jets at home? I don't know.
The Jets play defense.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. Like, that game's going to be ugly, but I could see a 13-10 Jets win.
I could see it 6-3. That's one of those that, very much like last year when we had that Indy Denver prop where it was the, no touchdown scored in the game. I'm going to be actively looking for that prop when we get to that Jets Broncos game. No touchdown scored in that one, and just see what that one looks like. So
no, absolutely. So yes, so I'm a free agent. I'm open to being persuaded one way or another. There are a couple teams that I absolutely will not join the fandom of. I'm not going to upset anyone by announcing all of those, but there are a select few that I'm going to say absolutely no way. But for the most part, there's probably about 22 to 25 teams or so. I'd be well interested in becoming a fan. So let me know what it's going to take. Let me know what your thoughts are, and we'll go from there. But these Broncos are, I don't know, man. Like, it's just, I've never seen an NFL ass whooping like that before, right? That was historic. Yards given up. Obviously, the 70 burger that they gave up, 2 points from the regular season record, 3 points from tying the all-time record.
And the only reason it didn't tie was because McDaniel said they've had enough. Like, they've had enough.
Because he believes in karma of the football gods, right? Like, that's kind of what he's saying. Like, look, we're not chasing it. He goes, but I do want good karma for my team, and I don't think that that's what would have happened had we just kicked it to kick it. So, I feel bad for my fandom. I feel bad for Broncos country, and the fans that call that team their team and root and cheer them on week in, week out, because no one should have to endure that. right? Like, congratulations, Miami. Like, you hammered us. Congratulations, but no fan should have to go through that. Like, that's just brutal. It's ugly. It's a poor performance from top down, from management to coaches to players. I don't know that we're ever going to see anything quite like that again in our lifetime, honestly. But
last time it happened was what, 60, 70 years ago?
66. Yep. Last time it happened was 66.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. But hey, just think about the fact that if the Broncos, manage to go 0-17, there's a really good chance that we get to see the Marvin Mims, Caleb Williams connection again, right? And the Oklahoma Sooner fans know what I'm talking about from a couple seasons ago when that was very much a thing. And I'd be excited about that. So
I was reading an article on Monday about the 5 biggest mistakes that the Broncos have made since Super Bowl 50.
Was one of them not hiring Kyle Shanahan?
Yes.
And was the other not hiring Josh McDaniels?
Not
even interviewing Josh McDaniels when they had a head coach?
No, McDaniels wasn't on there. McDaniels wasn't on there. Kyle Shanahan was one of them. Trading for the haul that they gave up for Russell Wilson. Like, I don't know that it's necessarily the player more so than what it took to acquire him. One was the Paxton Lynch draft.
Yeah.
And how that looked. And one was bringing Vance Joseph back. Like, the hire, and it was a 2-part. It was hiring him as a head coach to begin with and then bringing him back this season. Like, you get a 2-for. You were 0 for 2 with Vance Joseph. Like, he was not qualified to be a head coach. That's where you should have got Kyle Shanahan. And then you decide to bring him back because you let is it Ejon Evero out the door, and you fiddle farted around, and you couldn't bring back oh, no, his name's escaping me too.
Anything out of Fangio?
Yeah, Vic Fangio. Like Sean Payton was talking about, and he went to Miami. I mean, it's just, you have 0 pass rush, right? Like, you only have 2 defensive backs, right, between Patrick Surtain and Justin Simmons that are worth it. Like, at this point, sell them off. You need to get rid of it. And it's not because they're not good players, but you need to start acquiring picks. Like, right. You need to acquire picks and build it back up. Surtain, Simmons, goodbye, go. See what you can get for either one of your tackles. Goodbye, go. Running back's not really a market. Okay, fine. But, you're hung with this Tim Patrick deal, and he hasn't played a down since they signed him to a massive contract. Cortland Sutton's playing just well enough. I think you could trade him and get something out of him now, maybe a little bit more than what you were seeing at the beginning of the season. If teams are more interested in Judy, then move him. Like, it's done. Like, blow it up. Like, go from, sputtering in kind of NFL purgatory by just being meh and just below average to just be stinking terrible and build it back up, because this is hogwash. Like, the words I want to say would get us kicked off of YouTube. Like, I really don't know how to explain that besides just hogwash.
Yes. So it is bad. It is bad. I'm just, that's the only solace I have is that we've got the inside track towards Caleb Williams now. That's all they got to do is lose to the Bears, because the Bears also have 2 draft picks that very well are going to be very high up there, since they also have Carolina's draft pick, and Carolina, we've seen what's going on down there as well. But
and even if you end up, like, I just want you in the 1 position, so that way maybe you can trade back and get a second first-round pick. Like, right. It's not Caleb Williams that I'm pining after necessarily. Like, depending on how this plays out, maybe it's the kid from Washington, maybe it's Drake May, right? The kid from North Carolina. Like, there's some good quarterbacks that are going to be coming out here. So it's not necessarily, winless for Williams, but it is like, get in a position where you have a top pick, like 2-3 pick, and then see if you can turn it into 2 top picks. Like, somehow make it work to where you can get some bang for your buck here and start building this team the right way. Because with what the Texans did in this draft, right, and they're being competitive, right, this is working for them. We knew it was not going to be an instant turnaround, but being able to get their two top guys on the board and your anchor on offense in CJ Stroud and your anchor on the defensive side with Will Anderson, at least you have something to look forward to, and you're starting, right? Your young receivers are starting to pop with Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Damian Pierce he's coming along, right? We thought he might have a little bit better start than where he's at, but he's not unusable, right? He's serviceable for what he's doing here. Like, blow it up. I'm so over it.
Yep. We'll just go ahead and move on because we can sit here and wallow in our Broncos sorrow all night long. But we'll go ahead and move along here. We got a couple of comments coming in here, and then we're going to hit up some waiver wire. Mr. COD Reaper saying he used to be ranked number 2, just moved up to number 1 in his league, starting off 3-0, and he's been tuning in every week and asking lots of questions and getting help along the way. So nice job, Mr. COD. Picked up Thielen and Henry, dropped Zach Ertz and Nico Collins. Thoughts, or do I need to make changes? I probably would have hung on to Nico Collins over the Adam Thielen deal, but I can see where you made the move. Especially if Andy Dalton's back there, Mingo going down. I think Thielen has another big week, but I think he's very short-lived where he's got 1, maybe 2 more weeks of fantasy relevance here before he slides backwards on that.
Yeah, season for the entirety of the season, I do like Nico Collins, right? A little bit younger. Don't think he's going to wear down. Yes, last week was a little bit of a bummer after a couple really strong weeks, but he's not at that level of Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, right? Like he is a couple tiers below. So you're going to have some of these subpar games, but that's why he's a flex play, right? Like he's a flex play, maybe a wide receiver 2, depending on your situation. And Nico Collins, this particular situation, right? If I'm in a league where I just lost Williams from the Chargers, Nico Collins or Tank Dell are guys that I'm actively looking for. Like, I'm hoping that someone like that is on the waiver wire. Like, I'm hoping that, the Zay Flowers owner gets frustrated. Like, I can't wait for bye weeks now, right? Like, that's what you're waiting for. And I shouldn't say waiting, but that's what you're hoping for. Is you get in bye weeks, people have to make some tough decisions, and they drop players that they shouldn't. So, like I said, season long, I like the idea of Collins. Very short term, I understand why you want Thielen.
Right. And actually, anymore, after kind of diving into some things and looking at it, I think I think I'm actually leaning Tank Dell over Nico Collins, just from the standpoint that he is really starting to shine when it comes to getting targets, and the connection between him and CJ Stroud really seems to be a thing starting to really develop down there in Houston. So
yeah, that slot spot for Dell is working out well, right? Like, he's not pushing, he's not going up against press coverage. He's a little bit closer to the quarterback. He's running a lot of in cutting routes, if you will, to make it directly in CJ Stroud's line of sight. Like, there's a lot of good things because of what Tank Dell's route tree is currently for the Texans, that he has a high ceiling, right? Can have a high ceiling. We just saw him have a really good week, but he probably has a natural safer floor than Nico Collins does.
Right.
Where I fall into a trap personally is I love big outside receivers, right? Like, Tank Dell is fun, but the slot guys, I feel like at times they all just become one and the same. Like, I like a big dominant outside receiver, and I'm just kind of pushing for Nico Collins to do that. I'd love to have him emerge so I could have him as kind of my clear flex play in our home league, right? I'm bouncing around between a couple different guys right now. I think I've started a different flex guy every single week this year.
I know I have.
Part of it, you can call it an embarrassment of riches, because I do like the guys that I have to fall in there, but at the other times, sometimes it's nice to just set it and forget it.
Yep, very true. All right, Mr. COD Reaper saying that his roster this week is Watson, Mostert, James Cook, Metcalf, Judy Everett, Myers. The bench he has Lawrence, Algier, Robinson. It's Brian Robinson, Higgins, Thielen, Hunter Henry, and Jamal Williams on the IR. Going up against Burrow, Javonte Williams, Bijan Robinson, Stephon Diggs, Godwin, Kittle, Ramondre Stevenson, bench of Gino, Zeke, Damian Pierce, Zay Jones, Jaden Reed, and Sutton.
I
think he's all right here.
I think he's all right. The one thing that I think I might do is I do think I'd probably start Higgins over Judy.
Yeah, I'd take a shot there.
I just don't know. I don't know what Denver team's going to show up, right? And they're clearly struggling to score more than 20 points a game outside of the Washington game, right? Other than that, they've really been struggling to put up points there. I think the Bengals coming off a big Monday night win against the Rams, trying to find their stride here a little bit. And I think T. Higgins can be a thing here for him this week. And it also helps mitigate the Joe Burrow from your opponent's roster, right? Because if he's throwing to Higgins, you're getting those points and basically negating what his quarterback is doing. So I think that's something that I'm interested in doing, is playing Higgins over Judy. But other than that, I like the roster. Like, I like where he's at right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Rod tips down on the YouTube. Got a 12-team PPR, 1 QB, 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 flex. He's got Cousins, Monty, Harris, Pierce, Algier, Watson, Diggs, CD, Hopkins. How do I get better at running back? Do I trade CD for Scary Terry, Brian Robinson, and Flowers? No, you don't. Yeah, and actually, you're not far off on your running back. Monty being hurt has not helped you out there. But Monty very well may play Thursday night, and if not, I think he's back next week, right? Like, this is one of those that the allure for the Lions to potentially sit him, because then he gets 10 more days of rest. I think you're fine, and then you're really rolling out Monty and Pierce as your 1-2, and then you've got Diggs, CD, Watson. We'll see what that becomes there. But what also is available on the waiver wire, Rod? Like toss that in there and let us know what you got running back and wide receivers on the waiver wire.
I don't know that you're too far off, right? So Najee Harris has been a little frustrating this season. We understand that. The Warren hype is getting a little ridiculous in some regards. And I mean that because Najee is still averaging more yards per carry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Jaden Warren is definitely catching more passes than what Harris owners would probably like to see. But really what the problem is the Steelers offense, the touchdowns that they have scored have been deep passes, right? We had the Calvin Austin deep pass against the Raiders. The week before, George Pickens broke loose for a 71-yarder. Like, they're just not getting down inside the red zone and giving Harris the opportunity to score touchdowns. Now, I'm personally hoping that lightning will strike twice. And if you are patient with Najee Harris, at the end of the season, he will reward you. All right? We saw a slow start out of him last year. People were getting frustrated. And then towards the end of the season, he really started to ramp up, put together a couple really, really nice performances down the stretch, started to fall into the end zone. And while he didn't return his draft day value, he was a guy that you absolutely wanted in your lineup going into the fantasy playoffs. So, he is a potential buy low candidate, right? Like, if we were going to get into that, and maybe that's something we can do here for next week, Derek, right? We're going to be a quarter of the way through the season.
Yeah, sell high, buy low. I like it.
Yeah.
We'll add it.
So do a quick segment on that, on some guys to target. But I think Harris could potentially be a buy low guy if you believe that lightning is going to strike twice. Now, there's some risk involved with that. Yes, absolutely. But if he's on your roster, he's not droppable, right? Like he's not so bad that you want to drop him and completely miss out on that. But at the same time, yes, you're going to shy away from him here a little bit as far as putting him in your starting lineup if you can help it.
Right. And I don't know that you trading for Scary Terry, Brian Robinson, and Zay Flowers, like that's a big downgrade at receiver, and you really didn't move up in running back like at all there. So
Yeah.
Brian Robinson had a really big game against the Broncos. You know who else had really big games? Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert. Devon Achane's available in 70% of leagues. I'd try and get him on the roster through the waiver over making that trade. I'd go out and I'd look at acquiring Roschon Johnson, who's available in 60% of leagues right now, off the waiver wire. And guess what? He gets to play Denver this week. So there's a good chance that he blows up, has a really good one there. And I'd probably go, you take a look at that. He's actually saying on a waiver, he's got Kendre Miller, Elijah Mitchell, Rico Duandel.
Mitchell is interesting because the more the season goes on, the more I think you're going to see him being used, right? Like the Niners love them some Christian McCaffrey, but at the same time, they understand that they want to keep him healthy. Their aspirations are in February, not September, October, November. So I do think Elijah Mitchell isn't a bad stash to use as, whether it's, the ability to have some bye week flexibility, having a different option depending on matchups, that type of thing. Elijah Mitchell this week, I like in DFS, right? A pretty cheap price tag going up against the Arizona Cardinals. The Niners, are really humming here right now on offense. So I like Elijah Mitchell as kind of a buy down option in DFS if you're going to pay up for a receiver or tight end. So just food for thought there. And the Rico down, I don't know. It's a nice story, but he doesn't see the volume, right? This Cowboys offense right now is a little clunky as right. Why you were potentially entertaining, trading CD Lamb.
Right. Well, not only that, they're going up against the Patriots. And what are the Patriots, what is Bill looking to do? He's looking to take away your best option, which right now in the Cowboys' best option is to run the ball. So make Dak try and beat you. And Rod, there's other trades out there for you. If you want to move CD, I get it, but you're selling low on him at that point.
Yeah. You have the number one quarterback currently in Kirk Cousins, right? He's on track for like 1 million passing yards and 500,000
6,000. Yeah, 6,000 yards, 51 touchdowns is where he's on pace for currently through 3 weeks.
Yeah, so you got the number one quarterback. You got Diggs out of Buffalo. I like CD as a number 2 is so good. It gives you such a natural advantage over your opponents. Yes, you're going to have some down weeks like last week where they seemingly forgot that he was on the field here for some reason, but overall, CD's time will come. They will continue to work on that, and he'll catch his stride here. So I'd sit tight on that trade for the moment. Mitchell maybe, but I don't even know who you drop at that point. Like as I'm going through and looking at this, I'm not sure who I'd drop to keep Mitchell on my team or to get Mitchell on my team.
Right. I'm trying to think too on what other potential ways he could try and go there. Again, I if Roschon Johnson's out there, and like I said, he's available in most leagues, I would go that route. But you could be looking at some different routes there for sure.
Reed. I mean, if you're going to drop anyone for Elijah Mitchell, Jalen Reed.
Yeah.
Just because you don't need it here at the moment, like
right. And Jaden Reed's going to be that third option in a potentially fourth option, like Luke Musgrave's really kind of been coming on lately. So, and Christian Watson coming back, where reports coming out that the plan is for him to play on Thursday night. So there's a very real option that Jaden Reed becomes.
Oh, I read it wrong. Sorry. I was reading Reapers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think you hold tight for one more week.
Yep.
I think you'll type for one more week. The waiver wire is not enough for you to, use priority or fab budget on anyone who's out there, in my opinion. Like, yes, Mitchell would be interesting if you have like some bottom of the barrel guy that you really don't want to use. Other than that, I think you sit tight for one more, right? You see if Christian Watson comes back and what that looks like. If that's the case, maybe you try and package Algier and Hopkins to see if you can get something out of that. And it's just spitballing, right? And you package that to the Bijan owner for a running back that he might have on his team.
Right. I like it. All right. Chris asking Goff, Dak, or Stroud. I'm assuming that is for week 4, and that's how we'll answer that is for this week. So Goff, Dak, Stroud this week. How you rolling it?
I'm going to go with Goff. And we'll get into our thoughts on this game coming up, but I don't love the way that Dak's been playing quarterback for the Cowboys this season, with kind of this new offense around him. CJ Stroud is intriguing. I think that would be my number 2, honestly, for this week, is have Stroud over Dak, but Goff. I like what these Lions have right now, right? I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like Sam Laporta and the emergence there. You've seen bits and pieces out of this offense. The Bears are going to go after it, right? They realize that they get one up on the division here by taking care of the Packers on Thursday night. It's primetime TV. So a lot of these players, you get a little bit extra out of them. So guys in primetime matchups, I like to start as opposed to just the Sunday games. So when all is even, I do lean towards those because they try to show out with the cameras on.
Right. And that's how I'd rank it. I'd go Goff, Stroud, Dak in that order. Chris also asked to start 3 PPR flex: Dotson, Nico Collins, Drake London, Elijah Moore, Zach Moss. If you need a floor play, Zach Moss is your floor play. Ceiling play, Nico Collins is how I'd go on that.
Nico, Dak. London, Elijah Moore. London has been getting to, I think. Give me a second. Let me think about that one.
Okay. All right. We'll come back to that one. Drop Jared McKinnon.
No. He's gotten to the end zone. Like they're starting to use him here a little bit. And they'll continue to use him more as the season goes on. So he's a guy that it's, yes, a little frustrating, but maybe you just want to sit on him, right? Like you don't want anybody else to get him as soon as he gets hot. But Pacheco's had some nagging injuries already, so who knows what that's going to look like for the rest of the season. CEH has touched the ball a couple times, hasn't looked that dynamic, and ultimately McKinnon's going to be the passing down back, right? Like Mahomes does like to throw to him and trusts him to dump the ball off and get him some work when needed. So I would keep a hold of Jerick McKinnon.
Fair enough. Hunter Henry or Musgrave rest of season?
Neither.
Yeah, I'm gonna be playing streaming at that point.
Streaming a little bit, right? Like if you made me pick one, I'd tell you Hunter Henry. Like Mac Jones has to continue to throw the ball to somebody. And yes, this past week was a down week, but Hunter Henry was tight end 2 coming into it, guys. Like he's going to be seen as an option, which in some ways is mind-blowing because why did you pay Mike Gesicki to come in? Because he's not a blocking tight end. But they brought him in, and Hunter's the one still seeing the targets.
Absolutely. Also, what's your forecast on Achane rest of season? Thanks.
Okay. I was wondering when this question was going to pop up. So his very first game of his career is his career game. You will never see him come close to what he did this past Sunday against the Broncos, right? 4 touchdowns. What was it? 217 all-purpose yards or something in that realm.
233 just from the line of scrimmage, 203 rushing, 30 yards through the air.
There you go. So he's not going to touch that again. However, he works really well in this Miami offense. So I think he will continue to be used, right? Like that is coming out party. As long as he stays healthy, I think you're going to see that. And Mostert has done just fine. So Jeff Wilson owners, I'm sorry, but you've kind of been displaced, right? Like Jeff Wilson is not going to, in my opinion, I don't see how Jeff Wilson comes and carves out a massive spot when Raheem Mostert has been playing extremely well, and as long as his health holds up, he hasn't done anything to lose his job. And then Devon Achane came in and lit the world on fire in his NFL debut. So I think he's a potential flex play, right? Like I would rather have Jerome Ford rest of season than Devon Achane. Achane's ceiling's higher, right? His ceiling is higher, but week in and week out for the running back position, if I lost Nick Chubb, I would rather have Jerome Ford just because of how these offenses are formulated. Like Ford will see the consistent volume and opportunity as your RB2. Achane's going to see some high ceiling opportunities just because he is lightning quick, right? He's lightning in a bottle. He does have some wiggle to him. So I think he's a good flex play going forward. And we're all running back starved. So, I mean, he's going to get picked up. But I do think that I would lean Ford over Achane. Not many people are seeing it that way. And I understand I might be a little bit in the minority here. But, Cleveland is a run-first offense. And Ford is going to be the number one option there. Miami is a passing-first option. And Achane is going to be the fourth or fifth option there.
Right. And so part of that too, right? Like interestingly enough, and this is something that not a lot of folks, they kind of glance over when they look at that Miami performance that just happened this last week. Savon Ahmed was a scratch on that one, right? He was banged up. He was out on that one. Fully believe that had he been a healthy and ready to go, we would have seen a three-headed monster on that one as well, and you would have seen him cut into both Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane's week there, to the point where realistically when Miami's running the ball and they're looking to do this, I think that they're looking to run three running backs out there every single game and get them anywhere from about 8 to 14 touches. And just kind of depending upon who's got the hot hand is who's going to see more of the snaps and more of the touches on that one. So it's one of those that you're going to be playing him for what he's going to do on 10 to 15 opportunities per game. And it's going to come down to him breaking one open and making it happen. Now, he's got the speed to get outside and make a play happen. So he's going to be a big play type of guy, but I think that's kind of where you're looking at that one. And more so that flex play consideration, like Kevin was saying, where it's tough to put a guy out there into starting running back 1-2 position on a guy that's going to realistically see maybe 10 opportunities a game on that one. So that's just kind of how I see that one as well. All right. Kincaid or Ertz rest of season? I think I'm going to lean Zach Ertz, who besides this game against Dallas here in week 2, he was seeing 9 targets a game. And I think we'll probably see that bounce back there. And so I'm going to take the guy getting the volume.
Yeah, they definitely kept Ertz in line more to help give a little bit more time to Josh Dobbs against the Cowboys pass rush, right? So you saw his targets drop out. I'm going to lean Kincaid only because I think Buffalo is – I think the more that Gabe Davis goes off, the more it actually helps Kincaid, because now he's the third option and eyes aren't going to be on him as much. So I like Kincaid there. Ertz is definitely tried and true. There's nothing wrong with that. But at some point, I do worry about teams catching on with what the Cardinals are doing. Yes, they've been competitive. They've been a bit grimy here the first 3 weeks, but now all this stuff's on tape, right? And they finally got that victory after being pesky to the Commanders and pesky to the Giants. and then the Cowboys. Like they've run the NFC East gauntlet, other than Philly so far through the first 3 weeks, and they were a thorn, right? And they finally, drew blood against the Cowboys, if you will. But I wonder how soon that catches up to that team. So I'm going Kincaid. I want the team that's going to have something to play for all year long.
Fair enough. All righty. Let's go ahead and get into the waiver wire. We're just going to kind of touch on this real briefly.
Real quick, Derek, I want to touch up on. I want to get back to Chris's question there on his, on his start three.
Yep.
So this one, it's an interesting slate this week, right? So Drake London is playing in London. I don't like these London matchups. So London is therefore out. I like Zach Moss. So Zach Moss is in, and then you're getting into Elijah Moore against Baltimore. I kind of like the upside with that here a little bit, right? Like Baltimore just laid up kind of a stinker against the Colts. And then Nico Collins, a little bit tougher-ish going up against the Texans, going up against the Steelers, but the Steelers just let Devontae Adams feast.
Right. So, and the Steelers are allowing the 6th most points to opposing fantasy wide receivers on the season. They're about a 15% premium compared to league average there.
Yeah. And then the Commanders are playing the Eagles. So I'm going Collins, Elijah Moore, Zach Moss for my pick 3.
Cosign. I like it. Alrighty, we got Terry in the chat here. Puka or James Cook at flex full point PPR?
Ooh.
Why you got to bring the tough ones, Terry? Show up here and you ask the tough questions. I see how you are.
So, man.
It's close, but
I'm going with James Cook.
Yeah.
This week now, and the reason for that is Puka, I think, still has the higher upside in the grand scheme of things because of what we've seen him do and the way Matt Stafford was hyper targeting him. But I do wonder how much of the Bengals film the NFL is going to kind of look at to neutralize what Puka's been doing, right? Like they definitely kept him in check. It was more Tutu Atwell and forcing Stafford into that second read. So I'm wondering what that's going to continue to look like. Now, the Colts' pass defense is not as good as what the Bengals is. So I see where it's a bit easier matchup for Puka, but I think I'm going to lean James Cook. I like the fact that the game's at home, right? They're in Buffalo. Buffalo knows they need to get this one. Not that it's a must win for the Bills. They're going to be fighting through it for the end, but to kind of get a early lead, if you will, in the division, they need to get this one at home against the Dolphins. And I think you're going to see a lot of James Cook because the Dolphins are susceptible to the rush, and I expect this game to be much closer than the Broncos-Dolphins game.
Correct. Yeah, I'm going to lean James Cook there as well. Both of these guys are in very plus matchups, so if you wanted to go either way, I wouldn't blame you, Terry. Puka Nacua, the Colts' 5th most points allowed to opposing fantasy wide receivers there. Miami, the 4th most points allowed to opposing running backs. So you've got plus matchups either way, but I would lean James Cook.
Who else are you starting at running back?
Yes. Terry, hit us up with that one. What who your 2 guys you're starting at running back would be. Terry also asking, would you trade away JT and Amari Cooper for Chase and Henry? I think at this point, yeah.
I would.
The Henry part is the one that kind of concerns me, and it really kind of comes down to how many games you think the Titans are going to win. So I do wonder have we seen the end of Have we seen Derrick Henry hit that wall, hit that cliff?
The difference is I'm not convinced that JT is going to play. I'm not. Like, you were at least getting a sure thing, Chase is an upgrade over Amari Cooper. And with
Correct.
Derrick Henry, yes, his snap count has been down a little bit. Maybe you see that change and they're just saving him the first half of the season to let him, save a little bit of that wear and tear, because last year and towards the end of the season, we saw Derrick Henry slow down just a little bit, right? He wasn't able to break through some of those tackles. This year, they're kind of week 1 was good, right? But last week, definitely slow. We're seeing Tajay Spears get some more run right away than I think what many of us thought would be. But CMC and Pollard, wow. Terry, that's an embarrassment of riches there, buddy. Good for you, man. But anyway, back to my point. I'm not convinced JT's going to play. So if you're able to get a haul like this, essentially, and you get a running back who you know is going to be there, and you get an upgraded receiver, I'm making this deal. I don't see that there's a reason not to.
Yeah. It's actually funny that you say talking about JT playing. That's almost where I was looking at that going, you take the running backs out of it, because if JT doesn't play and Henry doing what he's done, who's been out-snapped 2 weeks in a row by Tajay Spears, you are literally looking at, are you going to trade Amari Cooper for Jamar Chase? Answer's unequivocally yes. And then I would turn around, literally, Terry, if I'm in your shoes, I'm making the trade, and I'm immediately turning around and seeing what I can do to try and capitalize on the name power of Derrick Henry and see if I can get somebody else in there. So
heck with that roster, he can
do whatever he wants. Yes,
whatever he wants, right? Like you may not even be playing him. Like you're going to be playing CMC, Pollard, Keenan Allen, Debo, and Chase. Like Debo now becomes your flex.
Right. Yeah, and then you've got to decide between Puka, Debo, and James Cook as your flex every week. That's a tough
embarrassment. Good for you, buddy. Good for you.
Absolutely. I feel like we've answered a bunch of waiver wire questions, and you can find all the waiver wire stuff on every one of the socials: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at YouTube, and YouTube, at Good Old Boys FF. We've got all the waiver wire top picks, all of that there. Anybody that you want to highlight?
We touched on Devon A-Chain, right?
Right.
Roshan Johnson is a guy that I have interest in as a stash, right? Maybe against the Broncos if I'm really hurting at running back, but really as the season progresses, I think he's going to see more and more of that. So I like him as a stash. For quarterback play, if Purdy's still out there in some leagues, right? Because he's picked up as a number 2. So I like the Purdy deal. CJ Stroud, I think, is spot worthy, right? As we're coming into some of these bye weeks. If you have the right matchup with the Texans, I think CJ Stroud has kind of earned that. I wanted Jordan Love to kind of be my guy for that, if you will, and it's just not quite happening.
The touchdowns have been saving him, but the yardage certainly hasn't been there.
Yeah, and Aaron Jones is real close to returning too. So I don't know if that helps or hurts him, honestly.
Right. So I like it. Yeah, and CJ Stroud, like you said, 2 weeks in a row, 20-plus points at the quarterback position. Definitely worth a potential stash to get you through some of those bye weeks. So I like that thought there. Any other thoughts here on the waiver wire?
None off the top of my head unless people have questions about it.
All right. If you have questions about the waiver wire, throw them in the chat. We'll hit those up. Let's go ahead and head over to the Pine, the Shine, the recaps there. And for the Pine last week, actually got it finally pulled up here and ready to go there. Like we said earlier, Alex had kind of the call of the year so far with the Derrick Henry Pine last week, netting himself about 70 points in our little game that we have going here. Followed up with DK, Gerald Everett. Both of those looked all right for him. I called for Ramondre Stevens, Mike Evans, and Darren Waller to be my Pines. Mike Evans called not so much on that one. And then you had Jerome Ford, Jamar Chase, TJ Hawkinson. The 1 week, Jamar Chase decides to go off, and he still finished below his projected rank. But this was a crazy week for wide receivers here. And
that one stung a little bit, right? Because he did finish ranked lower, but his points got on it. That one hurt. a little bit as far as the Pines go. But Jerome Ford, again, speaking to why I like Jerome Ford over Devon A-Chain, right? He did fall into the end zone. The usage is there, and that's a great turnout in a matchup that was not supposed to be very good, right? Going up against the Titans and their stout run defense, and Ford still came out as RB7 on the week. Like that's why you blew a big chunk of your fab budget, as I did in our home league, to get him on our roster. I was just not intelligent enough to play him. I sat him.
Fair enough.
Luckily, it didn't cost me.
True. All right, headed over to the Shine recap, and really the big call there was the Romeo Dobbs. Showing up, shining out again, having a big week there. Any thoughts here on that? Alex had called for Kyron Williams, Jordan Addison, Cade Otton. Missed on every one of those. I called for Jalen Warren, Romeo Dobbs, Evan Ingram. Really kind of just hit on Romeo and kind of pushed on the other two. And then you called for Tony Jones Jr., Jalen Waddle, and Hunter Henry.
Yeah, the Henry one was a bit discouraging. I thought that he would have been used a little bit more. But, again, it was kind of the same deal as Zach Ertz, right? Because the Jets do have a good defense, right? And they kept Henry in line a bit more. They were utilizing Zeke and Stevenson both, right? They were both heavily used in that game. The one that hurt was that 0 right next to Waddle. I should have come up with a contingency. I didn't. And then Derek and I didn't talk about it Saturday after we knew that he was ruled out, because that would have hit. Like, that would have been yes. A very nice plus number for me, and kind of saved my week. And unfortunately, I did not pivot.
The not pivoting does happen from time to time. Any other thoughts on the Pine Shines? All right.
Bad week. I need to be better. I need to be better.
That's what I've been telling myself all so far the last 2 weeks in our home league there, that just haven't panned out for me. But this will be a week. Number 4, I'm sure we're good there. All right. Let's go ahead and get into the Thursday night preview here. We got the Lions facing off against the Green Bay Packers, and Detroit favored by 1.5. The over-under on this one, 45.5. Thoughts on this one?
I like the Lions. I like the under. I think it's going to be a 24-20 game. But I do think the Lions come out. They're going to set the tone. I expect a big, slow-starting, hard-hitting first half, right? And there was a lot of hurt feelings from the Packers, right, when the Lions went in their last season and won late in the year. So I know the Packers are going to try and come out and do something about that, but the Lions have been playing extremely well. Yes, they dropped that game to Seattle, but weeks 1 and 3, they looked very good, and they looked pretty good in their week 2 loss. So I think they carry the momentum here again to get one up in the division, to kind of take the early control of that division, if you will, by getting this one over Green Bay. So Lions go on the road and they steal one.
I like that. Alex is calling for the Lions to cover. He's taking the over. He thinks that there's going to be lots of points in this one, and he's going to take Jared Goff to go over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I have to agree with him when it comes to Detroit on the points there. I do think, though, I think you're spot on when you say the under on this one. This one here, divisional matchup, I think we're going to see a little bit lesser in the points scored there. This one here feels very much like it's going to turn out a 24-21 type of game. Like, it gets us just on that hook under type of thing. Like, that's where this thing feels like it's going to come out to, and that's where I'm looking to go with. I am looking for Sam Laporta to continue his excellent start to the season, going over his 41.5 receiving yards prop.
Very good. With what we presume is the return of Christian Watson, I'm going to take Romeo Dobbs under 38.5 receiving yards. He's been a little bit up and down. The Giants cornerbacks have been doing a better job this year overall, and I think he's just going to struggle this week. So I'm taking Dobbs under the 38.5 receiving yards.
Yep, I am.
Still might have 2 touchdowns, but he's going to be under the yardage.
Yeah, that's a decision I'm off to make here in the home league on whether or not to play him or not. So we'll get that decision made here sooner than later. Alrighty, any other thoughts here on the Thursday night game?
Should be a good one, right? Like, I think this will be an entertaining Thursday night game. Should be pretty close. I'm for Amazon's sake, right? I'm hoping they get a good one because the Thursday night games have not been overly spectacular. The Vikings-Eagles game was pretty good, right? That was a pretty good one for them. Last week with the Niners and Giants was kind of San Francisco in control the entire way. So I do think this one's going to be an entertaining football game, even if you're not in the Midwest and don't necessarily have a rooting interest.
Fair enough.
But I could. Again, my fandom is open, so let me know. Like, I could be rooting for one of these two teams.
Yeah. I was saying if they were playing the Broncos this week, it'd be really easy for me to be just rooting for all of them. So
Yeah, exactly.
Terry's saying this past Monday night games were all nauseating. I tend to agree that Cincinnati game was finished interestingly enough, but
The pass rushing in that game was awesome, though. Like,
yes,
the some of the play, yeah, but holy smokes, Henderson getting after Stafford and what the Rams were trying to do to disrupt Joe Burrow and finally got him to move off his spot a little bit, but it was too late. But if you're a fan of pass rushing, it was fun to watch. There were some licks laid down in that game.
yes. And then Azizi20 on YouTube asking, are there any running backs you're high on going forward? Should I be trading for? Running backs are Gibbs, Monty, White, Warren, Charbonnet, Hunt. 3-0, but feel like they need to improve at running back to dominate the league.
I like White. I like Monty. We both like White, right? And we both like Monty. So
correct.
The injury was a bit of a bummer, right? But I do think that once Monty comes back, he's there. I'm not buying the Kareem Hunt hype at all. Like just the same coaching staff, the same ownership were the people who let him freely walk out of town because they had Jerome Ford on the roster with Nick Chubb. So I don't think that he's going to be much of a factor. Roschon Johnson, right? Like if you're looking for a cheaper option, Roschon Johnson, Jerick McKinnon, kind of like what we talked about earlier. Like if you're looking for guys to stash, those are kind of potential options. Buy low candidate could possibly be Najee Harris. Could possibly be Josh Jacobs. That owner could be frustrated too. He hasn't done a whole lot. Aaron Jones is another potential buy low since he's been out the last couple weeks. That owner could be frustrated.
Miles Sanders would be a guy I'd throw into that mix as well.
Mm-hmm. So
if you look at Miles Sanders' strength of schedule in the playoffs, it is really good.
Yeah. So there's definitely some options out there. You just got to find the right dance partner.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Other guys that are cheaper, or cheaper now than what they were at the start of the season that I think you could kind of have your eye on.
I like it. Swift and Dotson for Pacheco and Watson. I have 4 good running backs and need a wide receiver. You would still need a good wide receiver at that point.
Yeah, I don't think Watson does it. With what Swift has done these last couple weeks, he's really finding his own here in Philly. And it's clear that it's him and Gainwell, right? Rashad Penny is on the outside looking in. So I don't think that does it. It's a slight upgrade over Dotson, and I think it's a pretty big downgrade to get Pacheco. So again, I would be.
Again, I'm well on the record.
Wide receiver, I think that's fine, right? Like you feel like you can pivot off of Swift, and there's nothing wrong with that. But instead of Christian Watson, I mean, I'd be looking Michael Pittman Jr. I would be looking at a buy low candidate for possibly Jerry Jeudy, right? Like, and I know that the Broncos offense isn't what we love, but I'd be looking at that option. I'd be looking at Nico Collins. I would be looking at.
I'd be willing to go out and see if the guy having Chris Olave is worried about Derek Carr being out. Like I'd take that shot and see.
Right. Calvin Ridley, big week 1, bad weeks 2 and 3. Like
big first half, horrible 10 quarters after.
Fair enough, right? So, I mean, he's another potential buy low candidate on the wide receiver side. See, we were talking about a segment next week, and here we are. We're just kind of hammering all that through.
Yeah, we're gonna have to really put one out there for that for sure.
Nighthawk, are you starting 2 or 3 wide receivers in this league? Because that's going to be part. If it's a 3 wide receiver league, I understand why it's going to be hard to make people budge. If it's 2, I think you gotta find someone willing to engage in conversation,
right,
and see what that is, right? Like if you're looking for Tyreek or Jefferson or Jamar Chase, like I understand why those folks are saying, no way. 3
wide receiver. Okay.
So that one's going to be a bit tougher, right? Because the tight ends are terrible, right? They're not dependable. So 3 wide receivers are going to be a bit tougher. I would be. You could try and pump up the fact that Cooper Kupp's coming back and see if the Kupp owner who has him sitting on IR is looking to budge off of that. That's a possibility. I'm trying to think of another possible one. The Gabe Davis, right?
Yeah.
If that owner is willing to budge, I'd be hitting the waiver wire and seeing if
Romeo Dobbs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins are all out there.
Josh Palmer, right?
Yeah.
Like Josh Palmer's a guy, if he's on your waiver wire, I'd be targeting him this week with Mike Williams going down.
DJ Chark would be a guy that I'd be trying to sneak onto my roster somehow. Like this is one of those that Adam Thielen's getting all the hype on this one, who Adam Thielen's available in a lot of leagues out there. But this could be one of those that we could see some ascension of DJ Chark, who looked pretty good coming off the injury. And that's one of those that a lot of folks he's flying under the radar here pretty good. So that might be a shot there too.
Mims, right? If you're looking for a high upside play, we've seen his explosion here for the Broncos.
Yes.
On that
one.
Insane. Okay. Well, it's nice to know that not.
So he has Kelsey, Ridley, and Hawkinson right now.
Okay. So, as I'm chewing through this, sorry, I'm running through rosters in my head. Jacoby Myers, right?
Yeah.
Might be a potential option for Swift. Straight up, I think that's seemingly fair. If they're hurting at running back. Marvin Mims, Mingo, honestly, like Mingo's been seeing a ton of targets, right? Like he's not catching them yet, but he is seeing targets. 8 the first week, 8 the second week, 6 in week 3 before he went out. So you are seeing targets there, which is a good thing. Opportunity is key for looking for a third wide receiver right there. So that's something that you could be looking into.
That was who I was just going to mention, Terry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Ayuk being out this past week and Debo having the monster week, yeah, you might have the Ayuk owner a little shook here at the moment and seeing if that's a possible option. I'd love to get him on my roster. But yeah, so again, it's finding the right dance partner and seeing what people are willing to part with, and then you might have to change kind of what you're looking or willing to give up here. But I do think that it's possible, right? Like with the way Swift has played the last couple of weeks, and there's always a Jahan Dotson lover in every group. Like there just is, and I think he has potential. I was hoping Sam Howell would be a little bit more efficient with throwing the football than what he's been here so far.
Agreed. Alrighty,
Christian
and then
Kirk, right?
Yes.
I know you have Ridley, but Christian Kirk is possible. You may not love having 2 Jags on your team, but he's going to see a bunch of targets here, and that'll continue. Jamison Williams, right?
Yeah, that could be a potential stash.
Yeah, potential stash coming off of suspension, or not suspension, IR, whatever he's on.
He's on like both.
Yeah. So those are some possible options for you too.
Nighthawk saying that he appreciates it. He'll probably just hold off a week or two. Yeah, if you got something on the waiver wire too, like that might be worth it. I don't know if you've got the Tank Dell or
I couldn't imagine. It's probably
I mean
3 wide receiver league like that.
Yeah, but I mean, like in his situation,
garbage.
he's even starting two tight ends there, so you never know. But yeah, I mean, I would take a look and just see if the Tank Dell, Adam Thielen, Romeo Doubs, DJ Chark are out there.
Kendrick Bourne might be a guy that's out there on your waiver wire.
Marvin Mims would be another one that I'd pick up, and because if this could be one of those that if Marvin Mims has another long touchdown this week, like you could potentially flip him as a super buy or sell high candidate there. He's putting in for Parmo, Dell, and Thielen. So, and if Thielen's out there, DJ Chark is almost certainly on the waiver wire as well, and you should be able to get him cheap too if you can. So
I would order that Dell, then Palmer, then Thielen. Like if for me personally, like I know that's how you wrote it out, but as far as priority of your priorities, I would say Dell 1, Palmer 2, Thielen 3.
Agree. Nicholas over on YouTube and asking Pacheco for Zay Flowers.
Yeah, if you're looking for a flex play, I'm not opposed to this. I think Zay Flowers is going to have a tough week this week against Cleveland, but I'm not opposed to trading off Pacheco for Zay Flowers. I'm worried about Pacheco's health. He's been nicked up already. Like it feels like there's gonna come a time where he's gonna miss a couple weeks to just try and get right. It seems to happen to Kansas City every year, and they just find a way to plug through it. So I'd be all for that deal.
Yeah, I would as well. All righty. Do you guys like Dell more than Nico? It depends, right? Like Kevin hit this point up earlier in the show where Kevin is far more of a X type of wide receiver, right? Like somebody that's going to play on the outside, that big body type of guy, which Nico Collins is the prototypical X type of wide receiver, big body guy, right? Tank Dell, I think, has a very good connection with CJ Stroud, and I think right now with where CJ Stroud is in his own development, it helps that quite a bit. Kevin gave a really good breakdown earlier in the show about that, how he's coming across this the inside, doing those quick slants, and he's right there on those quick hits type of deal, which he's absolutely doing. So it's kind of a push for me at this point. Like I think both of those guys are really good, and I don't mind rostering either one. So it's going to come down to matchup more so than anything. On if I've got both of those guys on my roster and I've got to start one, it's going to come down to the matchup and who the defense that they're going up against, on whether or not they tend to give up more shots on the outside or they tend to give up more shots over the middle on those quick slants.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that one?
No, I think that's about right. If I had to do a breakdown, I'd tell you that across the leagues I'm in, where I have one or the other, I have more Nico than I do Tank Dell. But that's because I jumped on Nico after week 1 and started to just kind of ride that through a little bit. Whether I played him or not was depending on the league, but I did grab Nico early. Dell kind of coming on the last 2 weeks. I've been a little bit slower to that party, only because in the leagues where I was needing receiver, I already had Nico, and I didn't want both Texans.
Right. And this is one of those that, like, you look at this week's rankings, just kind of consensus rankings out there, they're within 4 or 5 of each other, right? Like Nico's like, slightly like 28 versus point. 32 type of thing, right?
Yeah, it's looking the difference in 1 point in projections.
Yeah. So they're really close there. So call it a split between us, and it's going to just kind of depend on who they're playing and all of that. All right. Let's go ahead and get into the pines and the shines for week 4 here. And again, as always, right, when we're talking pines and we're talking the shines, and that didn't get updated. So anyway, when we're talking the pines and the shines for week 4 here, right, the pines are guys that we think are going to miss their projections. Not necessarily that you need to bench them, you need to move off of them, that kind of stuff, but guys that are going to have a tough week and we think are going to miss their projections. The shines are guys that we think are going to produce and outperform where they're currently ranked at and where their projections are sitting there. And so we'll go ahead and keep the order that we've been doing, where we give Alex, then Kevin, then me. And since Alex isn't here, I'll just start that one off. So Alex is calling for Brian Robinson to go out there and be a Pine this week. He's ranked running back 21 on the week, and he is projected to do about 11.7 fantasy points out there in half-point PPR scoring. A little bit of a tough matchup there against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes. So I'm going to say Pine Tony Pollard. Right now he's the consensus RB2. Derek, let's check our sheet here, because what I'm looking at says he's projected for 16.5, not 7.2. I just want to make sure I don't get hosed here on the scoring.
Yeah, I'll send over what I've got pulled up here in a little bit for you.
10-4, because it must be different than what I'm looking at. But anyway, I'm going Tony Pollard as a Pine going up against New England. They try and take away what you do best. Derek mentioned it here earlier in the show. What Dallas is doing best right now is moving the ball on the ground. So I do think Tony Pollard's going to struggle here this week.
All righty, which brings me to my Pine of the week, and I'm going to take Joe Mixon, who we finally bucked that trend there, where the running back facing off, or who the week before they faced off against Tennessee, seemingly something happened to them that they weren't able to play in that game. But Joe Mixon currently ranked running back 13, and he is projected for about 13 points here, going up against a very, very tough Tennessee defense. And this Tennessee defense is ranked 27th in point and allowing points to opposing fantasy running backs. So they're in the top 5 of not giving points up there. And running backs, the teams playing them, the running backs tend to score on average about 5 points less than the league average there. All right, that's going to go ahead and move us into the wide receivers. And Alex is calling for Stephon Diggs Pine here. He is the wide receiver 3, projected to do about 17.2 points here in week 4. Again, he's just got a bit of a tough matchup when it's all said and done, going up against that Miami defense here. But this is one of those that this could end up a little bit of a shootout. So kind of a gamble on this one.
Yeah, we'll see how that one shakes out, right? Cortland Sutton had a pretty good day. If it wasn't for those 2 fumbles, losing everybody 4 points, Cortland Sutton his week would have looked a lot better than even would have finished out. So we'll see. I'm saying Pine Zay Flowers for this week. Cleveland's pass defense has been extremely strong here this year. And I'm not convinced that Baltimore has it all together in their passing game here at the moment. So I am going to sit Zay this week.
Fair enough. I'm going to say to Pine CeeDee Lamb, who's wide receiver 8 this week going in, projected to do about 14 points. This is one of those that he's, again, a tough matchup. New England's going to do everything they can to try and take away what the offense does best, which is going to be running the ball. Very much, I think, why you took Tony Pollard for your Pine on the running back. This is one of those that if it comes down to the point where they've got to rely on Dak's right arm to try and get that done, against that New England defense, that's where I think we probably run into some issues here. And I think that CD pays a little bit of a price on that one. So I think CD is going to miss his projections. Heading to the tight ends here. Alex is calling for Mark Andrews miss on his projection, who's currently ranked the tight end number 3, projected to do about 9.7 points this week. Again, a little bit of a tough matchup there going up against Cleveland.
Kyle Pitts. I just bench him. I'm not sure what Atlanta's doing here at the moment, but what is the point in drafting him where you did to not target the man? Kyle Pitts cannot get out of Atlanta for the sake of his career fast enough.
C. I'm going to call for Dallas Goedert Pine, who's ranked tight end 8 this week, 7.8 points. I don't know why we're still ranking Dallas Goedert 8th overall as the tight end there, but up against a tough matchup. Washington is top 3 against allowing points to opposing tight ends there, and Like it's bad when you go up against Washington. If you're tight ends there, they just don't allow points. And Dallas Goedert has yet to have a tight end finish higher than 17. So I'm going that route with the Dallas Goedert Pine.
Yeah, he doesn't score.
No, and doesn't seem to be that much of a game plan in that Eagles offense either there. All right, let's go ahead and get into the shines here, and we'll go ahead and start same way. So again, the shines are guys that we think are going to outperform their projections, and Alex is calling for Khalil Herbert to be a shine this week. He's currently the running back 32 on the week, projected to do about 9.6 points this week, and well, he has got the Denver defense that he's going up against, who just allow running backs to run left, right, center, all over the place. 2 weeks in a row, the Denver defense has allowed running back 1 overall on the week to finish there. First with Brian Robinson, then with Devon Achane. By the way, they allowed Raheem Mostert last week to finish as RB2 overall. So, yeah, if you got running backs playing against Denver's defense, it's a get-right game for them for sure. Khalil Herbert is Alex's shine of the week.
My shine running back of the week, Zeke Elliott, going up against his former team. I think this is kind of one of those. Belichick's going to find a way to get him in the end zone. Like it's I don't know. It's disappointing. The Cowboys didn't find a way to bring him back, and that they ended on the terms that they did. So the revenge narrative is absolutely real here, and I'm taking Zeke to have a big game. Currently ranked at RB 40. I think he finishes well in RB2 territory at the end of this week.
So I was originally going to give one and then also give my potential pivot towards that in case my guy couldn't go. I'm just going to go with my pivot. I'm going to get rid of my contingency plan here, and I'm just going to go with my guy that was my pivot in case my first guy couldn't go. So Roschon Johnson, I talked this one into myself when I was just breaking down Alex's Khalil Herbert. Roschon Johnson is going to, I think, have a very big week here. He's currently ranked running back 33, just behind Khalil Herbert, projected to do about 9.5 points on this one. And I think this is a coming out party we see for Roschon Johnson, who I think is going to have a very big week and outshine his projections. Heading over to the wide receivers, Alex is calling for Jerry Jeudy to go up against that Chicago secondary. Jerry Jeudy currently ranked wide receiver 30, projected to do about 9.8 points, and he is calling for a shine on Jeudy.
I'm calling for a shine for Joshua Palmer, stepping in for Mike Williams. Las Vegas just got torched up by Pittsburgh, who does not throw the ball very well. And so the Chargers are going to come in. I think they're going to be able to throw the ball all over the yard here. So I think Palmer is absolutely going to outpace his 44th consensus ranking here at the moment, and he is my wide receiver shine of the week.
I like it. I'm going with a waiver wire darling out there this week, and that's Tank Dell, who's currently ranked wide receiver 33, projected to do about 9.4 points. He's going up against Pittsburgh's defense, who gives up the 6th most points to opposing fantasy wide receivers there, and points are easy to come by going up against Pittsburgh for wide receivers. And I think Tank Dell is going to have himself a week, and he is my shine wide receiver of the week. Moving on over into tight end for the shine, Alex is calling for Dawson Knox to shine. He's currently the tight end 22 on the week, projected to do about 5.9 points, and Alex thinks that he'll have himself a pretty darn good game out there.
I'm going with his teammate. I'm going Dalton Kincaid as my shine of the week. I think he's going to be able to get out in some space here against Miami and cause a little havoc. But clearly, Alex and I are thinking along that same vein of Buffalo utilizing their tight ends here against Miami and trying to stretch the field on them here a little bit come Sunday.
I like it. I'm going to go with the teammate of your wide receiver pine here, and I'm going to say Donald Parham is my tight end shine of the week, who's currently tight end 37th ranked, projected to do about 3.2 points. Donald Parham just seems to be the guy that Justin Herbert looks to when they get in the red zone. I think Donald Parham scores a touchdown this week and easily outperforms that 3 points projected. So I think we'll see a pretty good Donald Parham week here, and that's where I'm going on my tight end shine. Any other thoughts here on the Pine or Shine for week 4?
No, should be a good week. Interesting cast of characters, really. It's like
right.
This is kind of fun, right? Some guys that we don't talk about. They don't get a whole lot of airtime, if you will, across the board. But I think it should be a good week. See how we shake out.
Absolutely. We do have some comments coming in here. Terry saying that he would pine Terry McLaurin, and he's going to shine TJ Hawkinson there. So we'll hopefully those work out for you, Terry. Ajazi, I butcher that name every time. Ajizi, I think is how you actually pronounce that. You guys think Keaton Mitchell could possibly be a high upside dart throat, or am I tripping? LOL. Yeah,
I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. Now, it's possible, but he's got to get right too, right? Because he was battling some injuries and everything else. So it's possible. Like I'm not going to tell you you're flat out wrong, because honestly, Keaton Mitchell hasn't even been on my radar here for the first few weeks of the season. So if your gut's telling you, take a dart throw, and if you have the roster space, go ahead. I mean, run it for a few weeks. See what you do. But I think for me, he's not on my radar enough to look at him just yet.
Yeah, and with Baltimore, he's really got to try and he's got to kind of work his way into that one. And I get that he's got the unreal speed to do some of that, but I realistically, we could see Justice Hill back. So he's third, fourth in that rotation, and we could see him be healthy scratches more than not on this one there as well. So upside, you're right. He's a possible high upside dart throw, but I'm going to be throwing my darts probably other places. First off, Terry asking, would you play Goddard versus Washington or Ferguson against New England? I'd play Donald Parham against Vegas. That's who I'd play.
Yeah, if you're not looking to drop and pick someone up.
If those are my options, I would go the Ferguson over at New England, but I don't feel good about that either.
See, and I think that's where we're split. Like, if you held one to my head, I'd tell you Goddard, but I wouldn't be happy about it. It's just going to be a tough week, right? Like, if those are your options, yes, they're going to see a couple targets, right? I think each guy's probably going to see 4 or 5 targets, right? Mm-hmm. So it's what do they come down with? Goddard typically receives the ball. His A dot is a little bit deeper than what Ferguson's is. So you'll possibly get some more yards out of Goddard. Ferguson is actually used in the red zone. Goddard's not. So there's touchdown upside with Ferguson. But I don't love either play necessarily this week. I think I'm talking myself into Ferguson as I'm doing that. I like the touchdown upside at least. So it is Ferguson. That's where I'd go.
Yeah. Both of them have tougher matchups there. New England's actually more forgiving against opposing tight ends than what Washington is as well. So the matchup's actually more plus in the favor of Jake Ferguson if you're looking just straight matchups against opposing tight ends and the points allowed there. But
33 yards and a touchdown outscores 45 yards and no touchdown.
This is very true. Shoot, even at that point, 5 yards and a touchdown still outscores 45 and no TD. So, Terry, I'm not happy playing either one, but I would go Ferguson. All righty. Well, that takes us down here to the end of it. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
We are coming up to the quarter point. Really, I guess almost the third, right? It's a third of this regular season for fantasy, quarter of the NFL season.
Right.
So, it's getting to be that time, right? We kind of understand what our rosters are like. We've seen the trends of some of these teams. This week will definitely cement that. And then it's time to start moving and shaking, right? As you jockey yourself into position to start getting through bye weeks and the gauntlet that can be. But continue to hit us up at Good Old Boys FF, wherever you get your content. And we're more than happy to toss out an opinion, help you out how best we can, and continue to lead everybody to some cash and trophies here at season's end.
I like it. I really like that point that you brought up too, right? Where we're a third of the way through the season after this week, or at least for the fantasy season. And that kind of speaks to the point that we always kind of bring up there, is that you've got to view it really as the regular season is kind of thirds and the playoffs is its own quarter type of thing there as well. So yeah, you gotta manage your roster as such, right? Like, and I've seen it before, right? Like, we have a lot of folks that kind of tune in like, oh, I'm 0-3 or I'm 0-4. So what? Like, the season's not over. There's still 2/3 of it left to go. And I've seen tons of teams that go 0-4 and manage to get into the playoffs and then win a championship because you just keep the grind going. And teams that start off 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, they tend to get complacent over that back half there, and they tend not to start watching the waiver wire, thing like that. So it is very possible. Do not despair. Even if you start off 0-4, there is still hope, and you can still make some things happen there. So, question coming in here. Very risky trade I made, boys. This one coming from Dylan. Traded Deshaun Watson, Kelsey for Lawrence and Keenan Allen. I have Laporta on the bench, so it felt okay. Hate giving up Kelsey, though. Wide receiver depth is Cooper, Smith, and Deontay Johnson. Thoughts?
I don't
mind it.
I don't mind it. I feel like you could have. Yes, Keenan Allen is wide receiver 1, so it looks good now. But the points that he's accrued through the first 3 weeks don't mean diddly squat for your roster going forward, right? So I don't know that Keenan Allen is going to be able to keep the pace that he's currently on, but I don't hate it, right? You saw an opportunity, you took it. The fact that you had Laporta there, I think, is it's a nice fallback. I think at the moment, Keenan Allen can make up for the points that you're dropping between Kelsey and Laporta, especially with, I'm assuming that's Devonta Smith. Being able to run Allen, Cooper, and Devonta Smith is kind of your top 3. You're seeing guys who are going to hit high upside, lots of targets, at least for Allen and Cooper. Smith is the one who has the high upside there. So I don't mind the trade. Like, I don't think it's doom and gloom. And there's nothing wrong with trading Kelsey. There's always a Swiftie out there who's looking to pick him up.
Right. Oh, we got a joker in the comments. I bet you they really like when I do this. Bye-bye. Come on here. Come on here and try and be a jokester, and we'll treat you like a jokester. Dang. Anyway, bye-bye. Okay. Dylan, none of what I was just saying was directed towards you, but yeah, that's one of those that this is one of those that Keenan Allen, when he came back last season, was wide receiver 6 through the last 8 weeks of the season that we saw through there. So I think that I like the move. I like the Keenan Allen side of it. I think Laporta gives you enough upside there and enough fallback there. Really, this thing's going to hinge more so on what happens with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, and basically who's the better QB finishing the season from weeks 4 through 17 for you. So that's really where that one kind of comes down to it. I think you've got enough depth to make that thing work. So I like it. But you're right. There is some risk to that one, because Trevor Lawrence hasn't been the guy that I at least thought through the first couple
They've been
weeks
a little
here.
clunky to start the season,
right?
I
really thought we were going to see the 3rd year ascension step up, and we'd see him continue that pace that he had put to the end of last season, and we'd see him start cementing himself into that top 4, top 5 for fantasy here, and that just hasn't really looked like it. So I don't mind the trade. I can certainly see why you didn't, and I probably, if I was staring down the same trade, I might make the same deal. So I like it. Alrighty, looking through any of these other comments here. Dylan saying thanks. Be tuning in again soon. Bayou Bengal Fantasy Network. Hit that like button, y'all. We very much appreciate that. And hoping that we are having a great night. And Dylan says, sounds like caught y'all when y'all were getting off. You're right, Dylan. We roll Tuesday nights starting 11 p.m. Eastern. We go live, and we also go again Friday nights 11 p.m. Eastern as well. Tuesdays we typically have Alex with us to rock and roll through the show there as well. And then Friday, Kevin and I go through the entire slate of games here, calling our shots on spreads, over unders, props, you name it, all that good stuff, and helping out with all your fantasy lineups there as well on the Friday night show. But Kevin, I know I said it earlier and we went through a whole bunch of other stuff. Any other final thoughts out there for everybody?
No, I'm good, man. I'm good. Enjoy waiver wires. I'll see how they shake out for everybody.
This one should be a fun one tonight. Dylan saying that he'll be tuning in later. Hit that subscribe and like the video. Absolutely. Thank you, Dylan. And Mr. COD Reaper saying thanks again, fellas. You're most welcome. And Bayou Bengal saying that there's some good dudes. You'll learn a lot from the boys over here. So appreciate all those kind words out there. Everybody, thank you very much for tuning in, listening. That's going to do it for us. Alex will be back next week. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.